Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the 15th anniversary of the tragic events that took place on September 11th, 2001. Again, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking the time to remember as we honor those who lost their lives from the attacks that occurred on September 11th, 2001, and those who have died in the years that have followed. It has been 15 years. 15 years. And it's so easy to forget painful events with the passage of time. Sometimes suppressing painful memories and emotions, they make it easier to deal with what occurred on that day 15 years ago. Since 9/11, many memorials have been built. The 1.5 million tons of debris from the World Trade Center has long been removed. The damage to the Pentagon has been rebuilt. The Flight 93 impact area in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, has once again turned green. It's been said that time heals wounds. It also causes memories to fade. However, as a nation, we must not forget the events and the sacrifices that were made on that day, no matter how painful, no matter how many years pass by. The passage of time must not dull our memories, our emotions, and our vigilance. We are here today to remember and honor all who perished on September 11th, 2001. We have chosen to remember the tragic events that unfolded on that day. We are here together. We are here united in our commitment that we will remember, that we will never forget, and that we will forever honor. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors.
Left, face. Prepare to post. Post. Recover. Present. Up. Order. Up. Right. Face. Forward. Mark. Left. 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 Right. Forward. Mark. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right. Left. Left. Right. Left. Honor guard. Halt. Left. Face. Forward. Mark. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right. Left.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, Carmine Izzo will be providing the invocation.
Good morning. Let's please bow our heads in prayer. Sorry. Oh God, our hope and refuge, in our distress we come quickly to you. Shock and horror of that tragic day have subsided, replaced now with an emptiness, a longing for an innocence lost. We come remembering those who lost their lives in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. We are mindful of the sacrifice of public servants who demonstrated the greatest love of all by laying down their lives for friends and their communities. We commit their souls to your eternal care and celebrate their gifts to a fallen humanity. We come remembering and we come in hope, not in ourselves, but in you. As foundations we once thought were secure have now been shaken, we're reminded of the illusion of security. In commemorating this tragedy on this 15th anniversary, we give you thanks for your presence in our time of need, and we seek to worship you in spirit and in truth. Our guide and our guardian. Amen.
And now our national anthem from the Treasure Coast High School Symphonic Band. Please be seated. We have many guest speakers lined up for you today, and at this time, I would like to invite the Assistant Chief of Police of the Port St. Lucie Police Department, Richard Del Toro, to the mic.
Good morning. I am truly honored and blessed to be a guest speaker today as we remember and honor those who lost their lives 15 years ago today on September 11, 2001. That day began like any other, but in the end, it is remembered as one of the most significant dates in United States history. I remember that day getting ready to leave for work, and my wife was sitting on the couch feeding our newborn child. She was a month and a half old. And she was watching television and told me about a plane that had hit the World Trade Center. At first, they thought it was an accidental small aircraft that had hit the World Trade Center. And I left for work, and I drove and was at Gatlin and Port St. Lucie Boulevard when I received a call from my wife, and she had told me a second airplane had struck the World Trade Center. And after a third plane crashed into the Pentagon, I think we all quickly realized that the United States was under attack. The events of September 11th changed our lives forever, especially how we viewed the world. Terrorism took on a whole new meaning, and war had been declared on our way of life and what we believed in as a nation. For the next several days and weeks, like many others, I was glued to my television, trying to learn what had happened and why it had happened. I felt a great deal of sadness for the victims and their families, and I was also moved by the heroics of first responders and volunteers who worked past exhaustion, trying to recover those who had been lost. I was proud that day to be a first responder. Proud of our brother and sister police officers and firefighters who responded to the terrorist attacks and how they dealt with the situation at hand. First responders must always demonstrate to the people we serve that we are in complete control of even the most difficult of situations. Tough decisions were made that day, in seconds. A total of 71 police officers and 343 firefighters made the ultimate sacrifice trying to protect and save others. I was also proud, though, to see how much patriotism and how united our country had become following the attacks. We were no longer divided by our differences. We were united. And the only thing that mattered at the time was recovering from these attacks and protecting our way of life and what we believed in. Never forget became the phrase we used to remember those lost in this historic tragedy. And 15 years later, we now have the benefit of history. And that benefit allows us to look back and learn from our mistakes. And as I've gone through my career the past 15 years, I have witnessed other acts of heroism by our first responders who have dealt with emergency situations and, unfortunately, other terrorist attacks on our nation. I have witnessed bravery and sacrifice from the men and women in the armed forces as they have battled terrorism abroad in order to protect our way of life. However, I have also witnessed our country once again become divided. We have once again focused too much on our differences, not realizing we have a blessing of freedom in order to have differences and to hold different beliefs. We have lost sight about the greatest thing we all have in common, and that is we are all part of this great nation. This is our home. And the victims of September 11th lost their lives because of the principles and freedoms our country was built upon and stood for.
All rise for the ringing of the bell. American Flight 11 flew into the North Tower at 8:46 a.m. September 11th, 2001. All uniform personnel, present, march.
As I stated, the victims of September 11th lost their lives because of the principles and freedoms our country was built upon and has stood for. This is why we can never forget. Now more than ever, it is important for first responders to do their jobs to the very best of their abilities, the way our brother and sister first responders did on September 11th. They lost their lives doing their very best and because of their belief and service above self. And as I stated earlier, I was proud to be a first responder on September 11th. And I stand here proud today of every first responder throughout our great nation as they stand ready to answer our nation's call. On the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, President George W. Bush stated that eventually September 11th will be just another day on the calendar, much like Pearl Harbor Day. But for those of us that live through it, it'll be a day that we can never forget. I challenge each of you here today to never forget and to remember the reasons we became united 15 years ago today. To never forget and pray for the victims and their families of the September 11th attacks. To never forget and pray for the men and women in the military as they continue to fight terrorism and protect our way of life. To never forget and pray for our first responders as they serve and protect other citizens each and every day. Thank you for taking the time today to remember and honor those lost. May God bless you, and may God bless our United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest speaker is Stephen Doyle, the Expansion Project Administrator, Broward County Water and Wastewater Engineering Division.
Good morning. You think you have a speech prepared, and when you get up here, I feel like you hold your breath until you leave. I'm a son of a New York City firefighter. My dad had passed away in the line of duty years before the event, and then I lost 4 others on that day. One was my uncle and 3 other friends. So when I was requested by the city if I would volunteer to help build the memorial, I didn't hesitate. There's a lot of heroes around here. There's the heroes that are engraved in that sign. There's heroes in this community. And I was very fortunate to work with so many of them, so many. So I'm going to pay homage a little bit to the people who actually helped build this, because this facility and this monument should be here forever. It should be for the next generation of people, and that's why we did it. The beam itself, by the way, obviously was donated by the city of New York and New Jersey. And if there's a little, just in the erection of this memorial, by the way, I'm going to explain some of the unique features that were put into it by the residents. These are the people who actually thought about little things that were put into it that I'm going to explain. The beam itself, we think, is somewhere around the 80th floor, somewhere plus or minus, because of its shape. It was the outside beam. We don't know which building it came from, not that we care, because it came from the heart. If you look at the beam, it's actually facing a certain direction. And if you look to my left, and if I could explain it to you just in a little bit of detail, the beam itself faces 19 degrees from this location, actually faces Manhattan. So, and what's the beam standing on, the support, the white support that you see on the base, is called a trident. And if you recall the days of those tragic events, when the entire building collapsed, the trident was the actual facade, that the only thing left remaining standing. So they felt it was appropriate to take that same shape and design to support the beam. So as you work your way down, obviously into the pool of water, that pool of water represents the souls of everybody we know and love. Obviously, the beam itself is sitting in the pentagon shape, and the pentagon obviously is actually orientated the way the pentagon is today, facing due north and south. So we thought it was appropriate to do that. And obviously, there's, as you start from the front, facing us is the first panel going counterclockwise around. There are 3,036 names engraved on those panels, starting with the World Trade Center. Unfortunately, though, the World Trade Centers take up 4 of those panels as you work your way counterclockwise around the memorial. The last panel has all of the flights, the Pentagon, and Flight 93. It sits, obviously, the water runs over the top of the memorial. It represents the perpetual souls that hopefully we'll never forget. The outside perimeter is, you'll see green granite, and that represents the green fields of Pennsylvania where Flight 93 crashed. So there's all of this little piece of history was put into the monument by really residents, by friends, by people here, not just City of Port St. Lucie, all the Treasure Coast. I'm going to throw out some names of some of the businesses, but it was not just the businesses. They donated people, time, expenses. They're my heroes, because every time I come here, I think of this. And like I said, I hold my breath, and I don't let it go until I'm gone from here, because I think of my dad, my uncle, and I think of everybody that's engraved on that panel. I know the Castle contractors, if you're here today, they were the lead, but D&D, Welding, and Home Depot, there was just so many people out there. FTL Electric did some work out here. There was just so many people. And the marble companies, by the way, I think they all got together. They stopped competing, and I think United Stone and Granite out of Fort Pierce, and out of Palm City, there was the World of Marble, and they all came together without even hesitation to actually do this. And I have to thank them, because every time I come here, I think of my dad, and I think of I call them my fellow firefighters, because if you're the son or daughter of a firefighter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you look to there's one engraved panel we were able to pull together to your left. That panel, by the way, names a lot of the people that actually helped bring this together, and they're my heroes. And I was very fortunate that my neighbors were also my heroes to me, because as I'm working on the memorial, they took the time every single night when they knew I was working. I came home and I found my grass cut. I found food on the table. I think I found gas in my car. I mean, that's what they did for me, so that they knew I could be here. There is in closing, there is on the bottom of the panel, there's a gentleman named Joe Taylor. Joe, sometimes they call him JoJo. JoJo was right next to me the whole time building this memorial. I mean, he was my energy. If I didn't have it, he was there. He worked for the city. He actually maintained this facility. And unfortunately, though, in the last year, we lost Joe at only age 36. So every time I come here, I think of him now. So he's another hero that's been really monumentized at this facility. So I have to thank him for that. So with that, I have to thank the city for maintaining this and hopefully forever. I think there's a vision here. This plaza is called Memorial Plaza, and I have to thank Greg Orvac. I know he's probably here. His vision was that it wouldn't stop just here. It would be that it's a memorial. So I think the Iraqi freedom, and as we get funds hopefully to do more, we can do more and actually make this thing more of a memorial, not just for the World Trade Center, but for the years that followed. So with that, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. I would be remiss if I did not recognize Greg Orvik, Port St. Lucie Mayor. At this time, I'd like to call up Major David Thompson. He is the Director of Law Enforcement for the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, everybody, and I'm going to do my best not to make this microphone squeal, but I'm truly honored and humbled to be here. As a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and also a 30-year law enforcement officer, it is truly humbling to stand up here before you. I want to talk to you a little bit about a couple significant events that have shaped our nation and shaped our country. There were many, but there's two in particular I wanted to talk about today. The first one is on December 7th, 1941. At 7:48 a.m., the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. During that attack, 2,403 people were killed. Only 68 of those were civilians. 1,178 people were wounded. Only 35 of those were civilians. This was a military target. War had not been declared. However, the attack was on a military target. On December 8th, President Roosevelt met between a joint session of Congress. That time, the famous infamy speech occurred, and the United States declared war and entered World War II. This one event, at the time, united our country, but it also united our resolve. General George Patton said, "Wars may be fought with weapons, but they are won by men." The greatest generation came forward during this event, and the sacrifices of the greatest generation led to our nation's victory. We fast forward to September 11th, 2001, and the brutal attack of Al-Qaeda on our country. On that day, 2,996 people perished. 6,000 people were injured. Of those that perished, 343 were honorable firefighters. 72 were law enforcement officers, and 55 were members of the armed forces of the United States. On September 20th, President George Bush met before a joint session of Congress, and the United States officially entered the war on terrorism on that day. This tragic event also united our country and our country's resolve. Now, Pearl Harbor was 74 years ago, a little more than 74 years ago. The greatest generation is dying at a rate of 600 a day. 9/11, it's been 15 years. Thousands of people are still suffering from these tragic attacks, and people are still dying from this event. Ronald Reagan, he made a statement, and it was a profound statement. He said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it on to our children in their bloodstream. It must be fought for. It must be protected and handed down for them to do the same. If it is not, one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children, telling our children's children's what it was once like in the United States when men were free. I'll leave you with this final thought and the most important thing that I can say to you today. We do not want this to be forgotten. It is our responsibility. It is our responsibility, everyone here, it is the responsibility of every American to ensure that this generation and all generations that come never forget. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you. Do we have family members with us today who have lost a loved one as a result of the attacks? If we do, could you please stand? I just wanted to recognize you all and say that we stand with you, and God bless you. Thank you. At this time, Gary Hollett, firefighter engineer with the St. Lucie County Fire District, he's also the Honor Guard Commander, will be saying a few words.
All rise. For the ringing of the bell, United Airlines Flight 175 goes to the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. September 11th, 2001. Uniform personnel, present. Arm. Order. Arm. You see
Good morning. Whether you've been attending this 9/11 ceremony here at the Civic Center for the past 7 years or for the first time, thank you and welcome. I am honored and proud to be part of this Remembrance ceremony. And yes, I am the one that calls everyone's attention at 8:46, 9:03, 9:37, and 10:03 for the ring of the bell for the victims of that tragic day. It's been 15 years since we were brutally attacked by a group of terrorists who gave very little regard to human life. Every generation seems to have a tragedy that defines their existence. Growing up in St. Lucie County here in the 60s and 70s, yes, I'm a native. The big question back then was, where were you when President Kennedy was shot? Hopefully, this generation will have only one tragedy to define their existence. Where were you when airplanes flew into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and into the ground at Shanksville, Pennsylvania? I am a firefighter. On a tragic and historic day, I was training new hires at the Special Operations Station on the ladder truck. Someone came running out of the station and yelled, "That plane flew into the World Trade Center." We were stunned. We were perplexed. We were asking questions. Was it an accident? You know, what happened? Did someone miss Kennedy Airport, LaGuardia, Newark? We don't know. We immediately got down from the ladder truck and went inside. To our disbelief, we watched the second plane fly into the South Tower at 9:03. We all knew this was a cowardly act of terrorism. We talked amongst ourselves at the station about how our brothers with FDNY might be handling the tragic emergency. Was there sufficient water to put out the massive fireball we saw on TV? Were the exit stairwells intact so that all the people on 110 stories could get down? Were our personal friends and brothers at FDNY working on shift that morning? Many of us firefighters travel the country, seminars on educational things, try and improve. We're always learning. We've met people all over the country, and we call them our brothers. Last question was, could the buildings collapse? Much discussion on that. Just when our discussion of optimism and how well the buildings were built to withstand a direct hit by airplane, remember the B-24 flew into the Empire State Building? The South Tower collapsed. We stood in awe. Our hearts sank. We knew this was going to be the worst day in firefighter history. We knew, as people were scrambling to get out of the towers, our brothers with FDNY were going up and in. That's what we do. Immediately, we were talking about deploying to New York to assist in the rescue and recovery efforts. Brothers helping brothers. That's what we do. Phone calls were made to our administration asking and then pleading for us to deploy. The fire chief almost immediately responded that although tragic for New York City, the Pentagon and Shanksville, we need to protect the lives and property of the citizens of St. Lucie County. That's what we do. If you listen to the tapes that day, and probably everyone's heard them by now, you can hear the panic and urgency of people's voices. Some begging for more information to make a decision, and some making a decision with the wrong information. Bottom line, though, everyone was trying their best to save as many lives as possible. That's what we do. The end of the Cold War gave a sense of euphoria. The United States was a dominant country in the world, and we were invincible. The events on that tragic day, September 11, 2001, showed us we were vulnerable. 15 years later, you run into many people that were too young to remember that day. 15 years. Many have forgotten. Many don't care. I applaud you all for coming here today and remembering. Even if you're too young, don't care to remember, this day had a great impact on our country of ours. Policies, protocols, surveillance, vigilance. Hopefully when you woke up this morning, reflect on this historic tragic day back in 2001. Where were you? What were you doing? Who did you call first when you saw it happen? Hopefully on future September 11th, you'll reflect on that day also. Never forget this day. Remember to stay in your hearts. Remember what a great country we live in. Support our government and vote for the candidate of your choice. Support our firefighters, police, military, and all first responders. Remember, these are people that are rushing in when others are rushing out. That's what we do. Move to the right when you see the lights and sirens. Give back and volunteer in your community. Look up the Bill of Rights when you're on the internet surfing on your phone. Read them. Actually realize that our country is unique in its freedoms. Respect life, yours, your neighbors, your co-workers, strangers. All lives matter. We're all one people. Remembering that day after 2011, I remember in New York, the crime rate dropped to 0. American flags popped up all over the country. Houses, businesses, fire trucks, police cars, military vehicles. Great sense of patriotism. Great sense of pride in our country. Hopefully we can bring that back again. 15 years later, it's time to remember. In closing, remember, it's not about you. It's about us. Thank you. Now, with great pleasure and pride, I present the Port St. Lucie Police Department Honor Guard with the 21 Good Salute. Order. Arm. Now I'm going to introduce Rob Newman, firefighter paramedic, St. Louis County Fire Department. He's going to tell you a little about the bell. I have something to share with you.
Throughout most of America's firefighting history, a firefighter's life has closely been associated with the ringing of the bell, as you've already heard. As they began their tour of duty at the firehouse, it was that bell that was their calling. Through the day and night, each alarm was sounded by a bell, which called them to their place, their lives in jeopardy for the good of their fellow brothers, their sisters, and the citizens they served. And when the alarm was over, the tour of duty was complete, it was that same bell that signaled the end. On September 11th, in the year of our Lord 2001, our brothers and our sisters of New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania completed their task, their lives well done, and the bell rings 3 times in memory of and tribute to their life and service. Mayday, 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 a phrase no one wants to hear in the fire service, a universal phrase that sends chills down your spine. When a firefighter initiates a distress signal, it produces more stress and chaos than any type of incident he will ever encounter. In the modern era of firefighting, the sounding of the air horns on the fire apparatus is a universal symbol of evacuation. 1 second on, 1 second off. Get out, get out, get out. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
And now the Treasure Coast High School Symphonic Band. Thank you. I got to tell you, even sitting down back here looking at all the emotions, it's hard to keep it together, even 15 years later. To our fallen heroes and victims of September 11th, we miss you. But I believe that you live still in the heart and soul of everyone who chooses to never forget. It has been 15 years. Time is passing. It's our responsibility. It's our obligation. It's our duty to stand tall and to remember what happened on September 11th, 2001, and keep the events and the tears and the emotions in our minds and our memory and our hearts, as we will never forget and we will forever honor. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the retiring of the colors.
Right. Hey. Forward. Mark. Honor guard. Halt. Left. Hey. Reset. Order. 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 Prepare to retreat. Retreat. Right. Hey. Forward. Mark.
That concludes our remembrance ceremony. Thank you for being here, and God bless.